Excellent. Again, welcome everyone. If you could just drop in the chat where you're joining from today. Roxanne is zooming in from her car, so please, don't look at the screen. Please pay attention to the road. And Alma is in the Bay Area. Good to see you. And I'm going to. All right. Cool. All right, everybody. All right, so we're going to go ahead and dive right into to our workshop today because we do have a limited amount of time, and I'm going to, as ever, try to cover more than enough stuff. So buckle in. Hope you have a notebook handy. And again, this will be recorded and available to you to watch. So you can, if you miss anything, you'll be able to check it out later. So here we are, decisions. I know it's something that is challenging for so many of us. And, these daily decisions, they might seem trivial, but they add up, right? Like they contribute to our overall stress, our mental fatigue. And for those of us with ADHD, and if ADHD is you, please, raise your hand in the chat. The impact can be even more pronounced because it can affect our ability to prioritize, to focus, to stay motivated. But there are some, tips and tricks and little things that we can do to improve our decision-making skills. And, doing that is going to enhance our overall well-being and reduce our stress and anxiety as well. Yay. So I'm not going to read all of this to you, but this is me. I have been coaching for several years around goals and career and accountability. And many of my clients are coming to me feeling stuck on their sort of like what's next, whether that's in their career or artistic endeavors or in their business or just in their sort of life and personal growth in general. And most of those are big decisions, right? But even small decisions that they're making on that journey, those things can add up. And so this is something that I know a lot of my clients are also contending with, as well as obviously everybody who's here today. So yeah, again, our everyday decision making adds up. These everyday decisions, though, often they can seem small, they can add up and contribute to our decision fatigue, which, makes it important for us to have strategies for managing those little decisions, more effectively. And I read something in preparing for this, I read something that there was a study that said that we make upwards of like 30 to 35,000 decisions a day. I don't know how accurate that is or how they could know that. And I'm sure a lot of those are just little things that we kind of do habitually. But regardless, it probably feels at least like it's that many decisions in a day. And all of this really adds to our cognitive load. So, from like what to eat, what to watch on Netflix, how we're going to organize our schedule, what social events we agree, to go to, what commute we want to take, how to spend our money, what to buy, like all of those things, take its toll. And so, yeah, so we're going to kind of get into that because the toll that this takes on our, cognitive demands is not minimal. So please reply in the chat. Why is decision-making hard, or what makes decision-making hard for you? I can just make sure everybody's muted. That would be swell. Thank you. Yeah, what makes decision making hard for you? And, here, we're mainly focusing today on that sort of everyday stuff, but, there might be some different things that come up around bigger decisions too. And there might be some rules, that come up in either in terms of thinking about like the sort of like decision-making rules, there might be some we can apply to both big decisions and everyday things. So what have we got here? a choice eliminates, like making one choice eliminates other options. Almost says having to do so much at work, and at the end of the day, I'm a bit exhausted to choose something. Totally. Natalie says doubting myself and second guessing, and Roxanne also adds so many choices. Yeah. So all of this stuff, yeah, it adds up, right? So, whether it's, like the overwhelm of having too many things to choose from. Also, if we have ADHD, or even if we don't, like there's some executive function challenges that come up too around like organization and self-regulation. Sometimes we make decisions that are a bit more impulsive because we don't want to spend too much time thinking about it. And sometimes there's also like demand avoidance in there, and also processing time. I find that for me, sometimes I need a longer time to think about something. And because I can process some things kind of slowly. And so that can make decision making a bit more challenging, especially if there's some pressure to make a decision more quickly. And so yeah, so I mean, some of this leads to this overwhelm because we're trying to do all these things all at once. We have too many competing thoughts, too much competing stimuli happening all at once, and we also need to learn. I think one of the things that could be really helpful around decision making is that if we can learn to anticipate times of like higher emotional and cognitive load, and if we have the ability to reduce some of like the decision making requirements during that time of higher emotional or cognitive load, that can really help out a lot too. So like if we know we're going to have like a really busy period at work, maybe that's the time where we're not like also trying to like make dinner every night and like having to make other decisions. Like we could just sort of say like this is like blackout time, right? Like I'm not doing anything else during this time. Everything's just going to be an automatic no, or I'm going for like the easiest possible solution. So that sort of like learning to anticipate when we might have a higher emotional or cognitive load, or like Alma, you were saying that at the end of the day you're tired, and so like it's harder to choose maybe what to eat or what to do, or or even just have to make decisions about the next day. And so those are things that we can anticipate, and in so doing we can try to shift our decision making to different days, times, or as we'll talk about in a few, if there's some ways that we can like even automate some of our processes, and that's going to make things a lot easier as well. So what gets in the way? What gets us stuck around decision making? So there's a lot of potential hidden costs, or these are kind of like the hidden costs of decision making, but there are the things that we can be pretty aware of that get in the way for us, or kind of can get us stuck in an indecision loop. We often tend to have similar paths of things that hang us up, and so like perfectionism and black and white thinking, that can be something that gets us stuck. We want to make the best decision possible, or we want to not move forward until we can do it in the right way. And also, if you are someone like myself who has sort of overachieving tendencies, that perfectionism can tie into that too, because we want to sort of like do the best at the decision. We're going to talk about maximizing in a few minutes, but so that there's a piece there. There's also how like pressure can shut us down. So whether that's internal or external pressure, if someone puts pressure on the decision, we can just stop having the capacity to even make that decision. A little bit of pressure can sometimes motivate us, but too much can shut us down. That fear of rejection, or sometimes we create scenarios that may never actually come to pass, and that's something that can keep us stuck as well. And there's also like the prioritizing of like how important is the decision. Like we have to decide how important it is in the first place, which is really annoying. So and all of these things can also lead to being overstimulated, to getting overwhelmed, to getting frozen, to avoiding the demand of needing to make a decision. And also, like one thing that I think we forget about is that sometimes we actually need input from somebody else, and either waiting for that or we haven't sought it out. So sometimes it's good to check if we're waiting on input from somebody else. And so next I want to kind of just jump into a few different practical, emotional, and physical tools, techniques, strategies that you can utilize to, in different kinds of decision making modes. You can utilize these different things to help make it a little bit more easeful. So just kind of kicking off with practical tools and strategies. These are going to be ones that are pretty tangible generally. They probably involve pen and paper or an app. They're kind of like um, looking at two main sections or two main kind of ideas here. So there's the sort of getting it out idea, and then there's the simplifying idea. So again, these are really practical things. So getting things out, sometimes our decision making is hard because our brains are too noisy or crowded or tired. And so these tools can kind of help you clear your mind. And sometimes that clearing the mind can be related specifically to the decision that you're trying to make, or they can just be to kind of like get that swirl out of your head and giving you some space so that you can pay attention to what you're trying to actually focus on. So I'm going to show you examples for some of these, but one of the things, like looking at the get it out list, like creating a parking lot. So like, I didn't put this on a slide, but like creating a parking lot, this is like a little post-it that I have that sits next to my keyboard on my desk. And you can kind of create a parking lot for things that don't need immediate action. This can help you prevent overwhelm by allowing you to focus on like what's urgent and what's important, or like what you're working on right now. So I have this parking lot for basically like to-do items that just pop up in my head while I'm going about my workday, and I could be really distracted by them to like go do something else, or to just kind of like want to act on these things immediately. But having this parking lot is really helpful because then I can just go and refer to that later, and I know that I haven't lost that idea. And then there's this sort of simplify section of practical tools, which something like breaking it down is to kind of break those decisions down into smaller and more manageable steps. So you'll see in a second, like my partner and I are planning to move, and but there's still a lot of questions around that move and a lot of decisions that need to be made around that. And so it could I could just say, like, where do we want to move to, or what kind of place do we want to move into? And that's a huge thing to think about all at once. So breaking that down into smaller, more manageable steps can, again, also help reduce overwhelm and can just help to tackle one step at a time. And we're just going to go ahead and jump right into these things. So there's some check-in questions that I think are really helpful. You may not need all of these, but they're kind of good if you're feeling stuck, or if feel like you're kind of like not on the right path for the decision that you're trying to make. And this could be like really quick. I've done this for like when I'm getting stuck on an email, or I'm trying to just try to like remember like what it is that I'm doing and why am I doing it. So like, who is it for? What's this decision for? Is it for me? Is it for somebody else? What's the ultimate goal? What is it for? Why is it important? And sometimes that's helpful, like that why is it important question, because sometimes I think we get focused on something that's actually not important. It's just noisy in our mind. And it's like, actually, it doesn't matter what I wear to this, or maybe it doesn't matter like what I eat as long as I eat something. So so it kind of can help. Ultimately, all of these are about kind of getting some clarity and reducing that overthinking that I think can keep us stuck as well in that decision-making process. And where's the resistance? And does it actually need to be decided, or can I just go with the flow? So we're gonna talk more about that one in a minute, because that is something that my sort of controlling brain does not appreciate thinking about just going with the flow. So, but these questions can also help you to identify any assumptions that you might be carrying around the decision as well. All right, so mind maps is one of the things that in that sort of get it out category. This is a mind map I recently made for the move that again, like I said, I was my partner and I are planning. If you've used mind maps, I'd love to hear what you've used them for. You can just drop that in the chat. So many of us are visual processors, and mind map can be a really fun and creative process. So you can see I use like different colors, and I have a whole selection of colorful markers and pens, and so it's a fun way for me to be able to bust those out a bit. And basically, it's just kind of like a holistic visualization of your thought process. So this can be a way to sort of gently organize what's swirling in your mind. It can make it easier to absorb and grasp those ideas because you can see how they relate to the big picture, how all these different pieces might relate to each other. So you can see I have some like arrows that are moving, from one section to another, and some things that even kind of branch off. So this allows for those different ideas to be captured in a more free-flowing way. It leaves space for new ideas, new possibilities, and it utilizes our brain's natural ability to make associations and recognize patterns among these different ideas and concepts. So, oftentimes these are used in like for like brainstorming, or like for like kind of project, kind of like more amorphous project planning and stuff. So here's a sort of tidy version. So there's software that you can use to do mind maps. And so this is from Mural, which is kind of like Figma, if you're familiar with that, but there's lots of different tools, or some that are just specifically for mind mapping. So I've used these as well. So if you like it, like something to be a bit tidier, this can help with thinking even bigger picture for certain things. And yeah, so it's just another tool. Alma says, love mind maps for curriculum design. Ooh, yeah, very cool. So yeah, I've done them for kind of like thinking about my business and kind of like what are the different elements at play, and like how do I want to play with those different bits and pieces. And so this is again just another kind of like an ideation, but it can also be a way of just like getting things out of your head. Another really good one that I really utilize a lot, and I talk to my clients about this a lot, is having a menu of options. So in this example, I'm not that great always at relaxing or kind of knowing what to do when I have downtime. And so this post-it really helps me because it reminds me of what things I can do during that relaxation or recovery time. And you'll notice that watching TV or scrolling socials is not on there, because those are not actually how I want to spend my downtime generally. So, the whole idea of a menu of options is that it gives you choice, but in a sort of contained way. So it encourages flexibility over rigidity, while allowing you the sort of container, the structure that you need to make an easier decision. So in this scenario, like this is my downtime, right? So this is time I have between work and the rest of my day, or, it could be like a Sunday afternoon or something. And a lot of times I will just do work or chores or whatever when, ultimately I do need to have some sort of rest. And there's a couple of different things here. Some are a bit more passive, some are a bit more active, some have a bit more of a creative element. Those are all different ways that I know help restore me. So that's really like things that I've essentially decided ahead of time are pre-approved by me to do during my downtime. So these are like this kind of menu of options is a really great thing to do for like morning routines, for lunch breaks, for any time where there are kind of multiple things you could do. And you could spend, say you have a half an hour of downtime, you could spend 10 minutes just trying to decide what to do, and then you might feel like you don't have time to actually do the thing. So it helps avoid that sort of like wasted time feeling. Reducing the number of options can help you avoid that decision paralysis feeling. And it also allows you that flexibility to be responsive to your mood, to how much time you have, to the needs, or wants that you have in that moment. So again, this is one of my favorite little tools, and it's so simple. All right. Hey, Twilight fans. So say it out loud. I think that part of the decision fatigue and overwhelm of decision making also comes from things getting too muddy in our mind. Like that swirl is too noisy, too messy, and we don't get things out. And I mean, I can't stress the importance of this enough. Saying, whether it's like doing the brain dumping, the mind mapping, or saying things out loud can be really helpful because many of us are verbal processors. So speaking things out loud, whether to ourselves or to someone else, can save us a lot of grief. It also enhances our cognitive functioning. It can help us facilitate better emotional regulation, and it allows for more self-reflection and better understanding of our thoughts and behaviors and assumptions. So anybody, who's talked something out with a friend or even just kind of talked something out loud to themselves, which I do quite a lot, help you, you probably have recognized how that can really help you to better understand what it is that, you're thinking about and trying to work through. And so you might just want to screenshot this. This is, ways that you can make it easier. So here's some effective ways to minimize decision making, or to kind of make those everyday decisions a little bit easier. So, different things you can do around eating, like meal prep and planning, how you can, like what to wear, all of these things. So you've probably heard of a lot of these tips. Some of these you're probably doing. If there's anything else you would add to this, go ahead and drop it in the chat, but I am going to move us right along. But the more these things can become automatic or automated or unconscious, the easier things will be. So anything that we can do to help us along on these everyday things, and there's a lot of tools out there, and systems, like take advantage of it. Like you don't have to make things hard for yourself. So emotional mental techniques, there are going to be some overlaps from the previous section because all of this stuff, decision making is not all practical, not all emotional. There's always going to be some overlap, and a few different emotional and mental techniques are, kind of lumped into like this kind of be kind and then getting a new perspective. So, like self-compassion, for example, practicing self-compassion, can help us reduce anxiety and fear of making, a wrong decision, just kind of like challenging our assumptions a little bit and just showing ourselves some grace. Reframing, reframing the decision-making process as an opportunity for growth rather than potential failure. And so that just kind of helps us kind of take a more positive outlook. And then there's also like, leveraging our support systems, like who has my back, like what can I lean on? And going with the flow. So, I mentioned that a minute ago. I read an article in preparation for this workshop where they basically were like, can you just not make a decision and see what happens? And I was not totally okay with that, but it also felt really nice to just see that there's probably more times that we can let things go than we think, and just let the sort of situation decide for us. So, I think that's kind of an interesting perspective to take. And I'm curious if any of you utilize that on any sort of regular basis of just like letting the not deciding be its own decision. So here we go with a brain dump. This is something I do a lot. This is not mine. I grabbed this from Reddit, but brain dumps should be kind of messy. They should be quick and scrawly. And so I really love this person's example because everything else I was finding was like so like cute. But it's a good way to ease anxiety before bed, again, to get that sort of swirl out of our head. And here you can just like write down all the tasks, the thoughts, the decisions that need to be made. It can kind of just like clear that mental clutter. It provides a clearer starting point. And so it can just be like with, whether it's around one decision, and it could be more of like a journal kind of brain dump where you're kind of like just writing out how you feel about something. It could be like, here are all the things I need to decide around this one thing, or here is how I'm feeling about these different decisions. So there's no right or wrong way. It's just kind of like whatever would help you get that stuff out. Here's an example that I've done. So depending on what is all there, you can also then organize that, kind of messy piece into organized categories. But I usually kind of brain dump like this, which maybe is a little bit wild, but that's my ADHD brain for you. I like to brain dump already into categories. I can't say I always do that, but is something that I do quite a lot, and I find it to be helpful for me to just kind of see what's happening in my mind. And in doing this, it actually creates more clarity around like some prioritization and what are like are some of these decisions or are they just tasks, right? Um, and then, all right, maximizing versus satisficing is some terms that have been coined around, like a maximizer tends to be people who strive to get the best possible outcome from every decision, and may be more likely to make big decisions like buying a car or house. So like it might be more like tied around bigger things, but they're generally doing a lot of research. They may spend too much time considering options, which can often lead to like regret or second guessing, essentially like lower happiness. Those of us who might be more maximizers can also work longer hours to complete things, which can then lead to burnout. So this is like a whole thing. We could just talk about this, right? But like this is just kind of something to consider where you're at. And satisficers tend to be people who are content with a good enough option, and which can sometimes be, maybe for lower level decisions. But, I think ultimately having a mix of these for different things could be really helpful. All right. And getting a different perspective. So, like if you can kind of get perspective from somebody else, can help shine a light on different on your challenges, and help see different opportunities and possibilities. And sometimes somebody else's point of view can be refreshing and help us lead kind of have more creative thinking, and can sometimes just like help simplify the decision making. If someone's like, well, I would do this, and I'll be like, great, I'll just do what you would do. Sometimes that's all we needed to hear. And then some physical strategies can be around like pausing. So like taking a breath, pinpointing like how you're feeling, processing that, and then proceeding with intention. Cultivating more body awareness. I've recently been learning a little bit about polyvagal theory, which is so cool. But basically, that's talking about how we can regulate our nervous system. I recommend learning about that if that's of interest to you, but there's a lot of cool things going on with the sort of like polyvagal theory stuff. Mindfulness and meditation, movement. Movement is a big one for me. That's a big way I regulate and kind of just also help to um, uh, can help me like process the decisions I'm trying to make. All right. And meditation is also another one I like to use personally. So playing, socializing, all of those things can be really helpful strategies for getting our body more regulated. You can screenshot this one because I'm not going to read it to you, but this is some quick tips for making big decisions. It's not really, the focus of our chat today. So here's, you can just screenshot a few different ideas for making bigger decisions. And then you might screenshot this as well. What, some reflection questions for working on big and small decisions. And yeah, so this might be helpful for you too, just in terms of if you want to process or reflect on your decision making a bit more thoroughly. Um, all right, that was quick. I managed to just squeeze it in on time. Yay. Thanks everyone for being here, but I'm going to stick around for a few minutes for any questions that you have. I'd love to, stay connected with you. So do, feel free to follow me or whatever on socials and connect with me there. And yeah, you are welcome to drop any questions you have in the chat, or you can come off mute because there's not that many of us. So yeah, happy, for you to just come off mute there. And yeah, that's all I've got. So thanks again for being here for Decisions.
Thank
Thanks.
you. This was really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Natalie. All right, thanks, Roxanne. All right. Thanks everyone for being here today. Really appreciate you. If you have any questions that come up later, feel free to email me or message me on Instagram. All right, y'all. Have a great rest of your day and good luck with all that decision making.